All right, good evening and welcome to Bursaries 101. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. My name is Megan. I'm a coordinator with Student Financial Support, and I'm joined today in the chat by my colleague Marley, who is also a coordinator with Student Financial Support. You could not be in better hands today. The two of us are very involved in the bursary process, including advising on it and assessing applications. So if you have questions, we probably have the answer today. Just a couple of quick notes today. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. There will be some time at the end of the presentation if you would like to unmute and explain the situation. But Marley is available the whole presentation in the chat for any questions. This presentation is only for the domestic bursary. So if you are an international student, we will not be discussing the international bursary today. That is a different presentation. You will not find value in this presentation. So please do sign up instead for one of our international bursary presentations. Bursaries are also for only current students. So if you are a incoming student, you're applying to join us next fall, this is not the presentation for you. You're probably going to be more interested in maybe our Scholarships 101 presentations, which are usually held in late fall, early winter for more information on entrance scholarships. But with all that out of the way, let's get started. This presentation was born from a request from students to maybe have a little bit more clarity on the application process requirements and how we do the assessments. Bursaries are not something that I would say is like widely known, which is something we're trying to change. So thank you for joining us today. So we're going to go through the whole thing. But first, we are going to start off with a land acknowledgement. The University of Alberta respectfully acknowledges that we are located on Treaty 6 territory, which is a traditional gathering place for diverse Indigenous people, including the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Saulteaux, Ojibwe, Anishinaabe, Inuit, and many others, whose histories, cultures, languages continue to influence our vibrant community. I am also joining you today from my home, which is also in Treaty 6 territory. Quick little agenda today. So we're going to start off, we're going to go over a bursaries overview. So if you don't know what a bursary is, that's that part. We're going to get that out of the way. We're going to go through the entire application step by step. I'm going to really focus in on a couple of places that students struggle with in the application or things that we get a lot of questions about. There's going to be a section about after you're done, what's my job? Other financial supports that are on campus, and then I will end the recording and we can do a question and answer period at the end. So I'm hoping that the first 4 parts of that are going to be maybe around 45 minutes, giving us about 15 to 20 minutes for some questions. So after today, while you're here, we're here in the chat. We're happy to answer questions. But after today, if you think of something, First Stop Student Service Center, the SSC, which is located in University Commons. So we have a couple of nice pictures there. It's a big, shiny new building right on the bus loop. So if you haven't been in there, definitely stop by. It's a beautiful space. They just started getting new furniture in, which has been really nice. So a Student Service Center, they're on the second floor. They can help you with things like your government student loans, bursaries, emergency funding, scholarships. They can also help with like getting transcripts or signing up for classes. They really are a one-stop shop here on campus. So check in with them. They do have a direct line to us. So if they don't know how to help, they'll reach out to us directly. And we are also available by email at bursaries@ualberta.ca. So that email is here. I'm probably going to mention a couple of times in the application to email us. It'll be at the end of the application. Always feel free to reach out if you have any questions about any of our programs that we talk about today. So first, what is a bursary? Not the same thing as a scholarship. Scholarships are typically based on your financial, or sorry, your merit. So what your GPA is generally is going to have a large factor to do with getting a scholarship. It's not the same as a loan because it doesn't need to be repaid. The funding for the bursary application or programs comes, some of it comes from donors. So those might be alumni who have decided to set up set up a fund to provide students who have financial need with funding. Quite a bit of it comes from the Students Union Access Fund. I'm not sure what the mix is today between undergraduate or graduate students. If you're an undergraduate student, you pay into the Access Fund as part of your non-instructional fees. I believe it's about $15 or $16 a year. If you do opt out of the access fee, it is a fee that you can opt out of, then you may receive less bursary funding because you would not be eligible for that chunk of the bursary funding. And then most of the funding for the bursary programs does come from the university administration. So who's it for? The program is intended to help students who are having a shortfall in their resources for the current academic year. If you have a lot of savings, investments, or other resources, like maybe family support, you probably won't be eligible for bursary funding. So the way that we usually we can't tell you for sure one way or the other, but if you have enough funding other than government student loans to pay off your tuition in full, then you're probably not going to be found to have a financial shortfall. But if that is not your situation, if you are accessing student loans to pay off your tuition, or there's extenuating circumstances, definitely just fill out the application. We can't tell you in advance for sure if you're going to be eligible. We do need to do the process, but you can apply. So to be eligible, you have to be a domestic student. You have to be in satisfactory academic standing. So this means something a little bit different for you than it means to for us than it means to your faculty. Your faculty, maybe you had a bit of a rough year and you're on probation this year, or you've been asked to go through fresh start, or something like that. So your faculty then might say that you are not in satisfactory academic standing. For us, all that we really care about is that you are eligible to continue in classes this year. So if you are on probation, or if you are taking Fresh Start, you are still eligible. If we have any concerns about your GPA for that section of eligibility, we'll definitely reach out to you. You have to have accepted the maximum available student loan funding that you can. So that does vary by province. If you have lived most of your life in Alberta, you'll be applying through Alberta Student Aid. But if you are from Manitoba, you would have to accept the maximum amount of funding that Manitoba Student Aid would give you, and so on and so on. So that is a requirement for the bursary funding. If you are not accessing student loans, or you are not eligible for student loans, you will not be eligible for the bursary. And the final thing is that you have to be attending courses in the same term that you apply. So if you're applying when the application opens in October, you do have to have fall term registration at least to apply. If you're applying in January, February, then you need to have registration in the winter term. If you are full-time or part-time, it does have an effect on your eligibility and bursary funding. So first of all, a part-time student is going to receive less funding than a full-time student, which hopefully your expenses are less, like your tuition would be less if you're a part-time student. If you're an undergraduate student, you can apply if you're full-time or part-time in either term. For graduate students, you do have to have full-time registration in one of the fall or winter semester. So if you are part-time in both semesters, you are not eligible for bursary funding. The big question we always get in the chat is how much are you going to get? We can't estimate in advance. We have to do our assessment before we can give you a dollar amount. There are yearly maximums and there are lifetime maximums. So the amount of funding that you're going to get on a yearly basis depends on your level of study. So if you're a graduate or an undergraduate student, what program you are in, if you have a partner or dependents, like more family than just yourself. Um, and of course, the most important thing is that what is your demonstrated shortfall? So to put it in very simple terms, if you have $10,000 worth of expenses and $7,000 worth of resources, we would give you $3,000 to help you bridge from 7,000 to 10,000. Lifetime maximums are posted on our website. For the majority of students, they're not going to come close to our lifetime maximums. The maximums are sort of based on you accessing the maximum amount of funding for your entire degree. So if it is your first, second, third time applying, you don't have to be concerned about the lifetime maximum. You are not going to come close to it. If you are applying for the fourth or fifth time and you'd like to reach out to us first, you can definitely send us an email. We'll let you know basically if you are reaching that lifetime maximum or if it is worth your time to still submit an application. The application is opening October 1st. So I am recording today. It is the 26th of September, so it opens in just a few days here um, for all students. It closes on December 15th if you are only having fall term registration. So if you are finishing your courses in the fall term and you are not taking winter term classes because you're graduating, then your deadline is December 15th. Most students, the deadline is going to be April 15th. So if you only have winter term registration or you are in fall and winter terms, then your deadline is April 15th. So opens October 1st, for most students, closes April 15th. Um, those dates are not at all flexible. So just make sure that you're putting in your application before the 15th of April. I would really suggest applying as soon as you are able to. The earlier, the better for bursary funding. But it's not quite open yet. So what do you need to know before you apply? The application does take uh, it takes quite a while. I would say maybe put aside like 45 minutes to an hour to fill out the application. You're going to need to collect all bank and investment accounts that you have in your name with statements. So a little bit later, we'll talk about what statements are needed and what is a statement. If you're receiving other forms of family of support, like family support, band funding, department funding, if you've gotten a scholarship external to the U of A, you're going to want to collect that kind of information. There are some expenses that you can add to your application. Most common is health, dental, and practicum expenses. So for health and dental claims, you're going to want to make sure that you have your insurance documentation for that and any other documentation of your expenses. And in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, we have made some adjustments to make the bursary more accessible to our Indigenous students on campus. So if you are an Indigenous student, the application opens on September 1st instead of October 1st, and you are not required to access government student loans to apply. So if you are Indigenous, you can apply now, and you do not have to have government student loans to apply for a bursary. While you don't have to have government student loans, there are grants through the government that you can apply for, and grants are similar to bursary funding. That they're funds that you don't have to pay back, so it isn't a loan. It's free money essentially. So if you do want some help with that, and you are an Indigenous student, just reach out to us through our email, and we're happy to help you apply for that. All right, one moment. All right, sorry, I'm just getting over a little bit of a cold, so I'll try to keep the mouth noises to a minimum. We're going to get into the biggest section of this presentation, which is how to fill out the application. But first of all, how do you get to the application? Gone back. Um, to find the application, the easiest way is just to go to our portal website, which is uab.ca/AFS. AFS stands for Application for Financial Support, and it is where all of our programs are sort of kept. If you want to go through the website, you can go to uab.ca/bursaries. You'll see domestic supplementary bursary on the side there, and there is a button saying apply for the supplementary bursary. Easiest way though is AFS. You're going to log in. It's your CCID and password. If you're having some troubles logging in, it's not really something that we can help you with. So I'd suggest that you reach out to IST and just make sure that your password and CCID are functioning properly if you're having some trouble with the login. Once you get into the AFS portal, you're going to see a list of all the programs that we offer. So scroll down until you see the domestic supplementary bursary, and you're going to click the apply button to start. When you get into the application, you'll see at the top there's quite a few tabs, and all of them are going to start out with a red exclamation mark. So the red exclamation mark means that you have not finished that page yet. So you can navigate through by clicking on the tabs at the top. At the bottom of the page, there is a save button that you need to click before moving on to the next section. So you can see in this example here, I've completed the before you start section, which just has some information about how the application is processed and what our timelines are. A lot of stuff that we're going to get into a little bit later in this presentation. So that section is complete. The rest of the sections I have not yet completed. So you can navigate that way. In the top right-hand corner, you'll see your CCID, your student ID, and an application ID. So in this case, it's SV33461. We can find your application by your student ID number as well, but if you want to be very clear about what application you're talking about, just quote us that number and we'll be able to find it very easily. Several points in the application, you will be asked to upload PDF documents. Um, we have tried, it doesn't get much more it's not a very intuitive process. We've tried to fix it, but this is how it is. So when you first get to one of these sections, in this particular example at the bottom of the screen, I am adding a prescription to my expenses tab. You will have to fill out that first section, the first line. So the type of expense, the amount, whether it's monthly or yearly, and then you will have to hit save. After you hit save, the second section will show up, that bottom part asking for documentation. So you'll have to browse to find the documentation and then click upload. So if you don't click save, the upload button won't show up. And if you don't click upload, the documentation won't go onto your application. So that sometimes causes a bit of trouble. So first fill out the first line, hit save, then go through and upload documentation. Other quick notes about the application that didn't fit nicely anywhere else. Application times out really quickly, both on your side and on my side. So make sure that you're saving pretty frequently. There is one essay section. So if you have a lot to say in the essay section, definitely write it in a Word document and then add it just so you don't get timed out in the middle of your essay. We'll use the term year or yearly a couple of times in this presentation and in the application. When we say year, we mean the academic year, so September to April. A note that we don't store any of your documentation or your information on any computers, and most people, your documentation will be seen by one assessor. If that assessor has questions, like I might go to my supervisor and ask them what I'm looking at. But a maximum of 2 staff will see your documentation. And the number one, like, if you walk away with nothing else from this presentation, I want you to know that we do not judge your financial choices. So if I see that you go to Starbucks and get an emotional support beverage in the morning before classes, I am not going to deny you bursary funding because of that. If you're like going out for dinner with your friends or buying, your sister a birthday present. Those are not the kind of transactions that we're really concerned about in this application. When we ask for bank statements, which we do have to go through, we kind of just glaze through everything that isn't a very large transaction. So I will get into later what we would be sort of be looking for in these financial statements. But if you're buying things on Amazon, that's not something that like I'm going to have an issue with. I'm not going to deny you bursary funding because you are having a little bit more of a life than just going to school every single day. Okay. So the first section is going to be about your student loans. So this is sort of part of the resources that you have, and domestic students are required to access this resource before applying for bursary funding. This year, I think most of the student aid programs are up to date or pretty close to up to date. In previous years, Alberta Student Aid might have been pretty far behind. So what you need to do is you have to have applied for student loans and you have to have received a confirmation. That doesn't necessarily mean the funds have been sent to you yet, but you would have had to get that letter. Sometimes it's called an award letter or a notice of assessment or a notice of funding. You would have to have that before you submit the application. So if you are still waiting on your application to be accessed, then do not submit a bursary application just yet. If you are an Alberta student, you do not need to upload documentation. We have access to Alberta Student Aid, so we can go through and pull any loan information that we need. If your loans are from somewhere else, so maybe you're from Ontario, so your loans are through OSAP, um, or Quebec Student Aid or something like that, then we would require documentation. I'm not able to get into those systems. So again, it could be something like a notice of assessment. It could be called an award letter, or it could be a notice of funding or a notice of loan support, something along those lines, depending on the province you would need to upload in this section. The next section we're going to get into is about your family and living situation. And the reason that this is important is that we do need, we use it to get sort of an idea of what your monthly costs might be. So the first part is going to be asking you about your dependents. So a dependent's not your parents or your partner or your siblings, or if you have children and they're over the age of 18, they also do not count as dependents. A dependent is under the age of 17 and somebody you are financially responsible for. So, a good rule of thumb is if you submit your taxes and you claim this child on your taxes, then you would claim that you have a dependent on our application. If you do have dependents and you have childcare costs, you can add those in this section as well. And when we talk about childcare costs, we're talking specifically about like daycare or day home costs. We aren't talking about just like all of the other expenses that come with having children. So you wouldn't be adding like after school activities or sports or increased food costs or anything like that. It's really just childcare. So that's another section that sometimes people get a little bit tripped up by. Then we're going to ask about your partner. So if you have a partner, there is a really good on the application a really good definition of what a partner is. Um, if you are married or you have been in a relationship with somebody and living with them for over 12 months, they are considered your partner. So if you have a partner, we would also need to see any bank statements that are in their name. We would need to know if they're working, what their average monthly income is, because that would be a resource to you. If they are a student somewhere else, maybe they go to McEwen or NAIT or Norquest or something like that, we would need to know what their tuition costs are, so that we would need their fee assessment, and any student loan funding that they have. If they are at the U of A as well, like taking courses at the same time as you, then they also need to submit an application for bursary support, and we would then go through and assess your applications together. And then I've put here any other in expenses that are jointly responsible for. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but if there is something that you and your partner have together as a resource or have together as a responsibility, something that you pay, we would need documentation of that as well. Okay. So when you're adding expenses, there are things that we include in something called like a standard cost of living. So that is an amount that we add to your application for the each month of the academic year that is sort of like a living standard. So that's why we're asking about dependents. That's why we're asking about a partner, because if you have a partner or dependents, your living expenses are much higher than if you are by yourself. So these are things that should not be added to the application. They are all included in this one monthly amount that we put onto your application. So anything to do with your vehicle, property tax, rent, mortgage, condo fees, anything like that, utilities, phone bills, um, grocery bills, none of that needs to be included on the application. Um, so you don't have to go and start like scrounging up all of your, old utility bills or anything like that for this application. These are not, they are included, but you don't need to provide us with documentation or information about how much they cost, because it is just a flat rate that is added to the application. But there are things you can include, which I did mention earlier. So health, dental, and practicum expenses are the most common eligible expenses. So I've included like a list of things that came up in the top of my head here, but there's definitely more. This is not an exhaustive list. The most common thing I would say that we see is like prescriptions that you would get on a monthly basis. If you go to therapy or physiotherapy, anything like that, for dental fillings, X-rays, dental cleanings. If you have braces or your dependent has braces, then you might have orthodontics bills. And for your practicum or like internship, if it's outside of Edmonton, we would also help with hotel and Airbnb costs. So these are all examples of things that you might be able to add to your application if you have those expenses. So to add them, if it's as long as it's not on that standard list that I gave you, you're going to scroll down to the bottom of the expenses page and click add expense. So we need documentation. If it is over $50 a month that you are paying for health expenses, or over $400 a year for dental expenses. And documentation in this, for those two, health and dental, is your insurance claim. So if you get prescriptions on a monthly basis, you would have to submit the claim to your insurance. And then what we need is the insurance documentation showing how much they are covering of that prescription. We need this even if they're saying they're not going to pay anything. So sometimes you can max out your expenses or it's not an eligible cost. Um, we still need it even if it says we're not paying anything for this. And then for practicum, there isn't a minimum. It's any hotel or Airbnb cost that you're claiming for a practicum or internship or co-op. We would need to see documentation. So to add an expense, you can add as many as you need. So don't feel like you have to cram all your documentation into one line. It's also pretty helpful to us if it's not a monthly charge or or yearly. It's better if we can just tell us how often you get it. So here I've added a prescription that I take, and I get it every 30 days. And after my insurance, it costs me $55. So you can see I've added it as a health in the health category. I've written a quick description. I've put the amount, and after I hit save, it did prompt me for documentation because it is over $50 per month. So then I've gone and I've uploaded a copy of my insurance claim showing how much is covered. Um, and that is a perfectly added health expense. Next is the resources tab. So this is after all of our expenses are in, we now need to know what resources that you have in your name. So most people are going to have like a checkings account or a savings account, probably both. If you do any investing, we would need that. And then we have a whole bunch of acronyms. So we have our RESPs, our RRSPs, our FHSAs, our TFSAs, our GICs, bonds and mutual funds. So those all kind of fall into a category that I sort of just say, if you have them, you know that you have them. So if you don't know if you have a GIC, you probably don't have a GIC. I did want to make a quick note as well about lines of credit and credit cards. So we do ask for these in the resources section, but they are not real. Like when we do our assessments, we do not consider them to be resources. So what I mean by that is I am not going to take a look at your credit card and say, oh, you could have space for $2,000 more to spend on this credit card. So you need to do that before asking for bursary funding. The credit cards and lines of credit are just to help us see where funds are being transferred to and from. So if you have a line of credit, maybe you're making deposits into your bank account on a monthly basis to help with your living expenses. So if I don't have that documentation, I don't know what these weird deposits are. I'm not sure what, like, it's confusing for us. So you do need to include your lines of credit and your credit cards. But if like don't feel like we're going to be telling you you have to spend a whole bunch more money on credit before we can give you bursary funding. Now this is the number one most confusing thing that we have on this application. The statement that you upload has to show August 31st. So if your statements for your bank account are not for a calendar month, so some banks, when you download your statement, it will say August 1st to August 31st. That's beautiful. That's the one we need. But many, many, many banks would have some weird date range. And it's usually like the day that you opened the account and then 30 days from there. Whatever the situation is, we need the statement that contains August 31st. So on the right-hand side here, I have included a bunch of examples. So you can see that top one, it's August 1st, August 31st. Rare, but that's the one we want. The next couple, they start in the late August, August 20th, August 21st, August 26th, and they go until mid to late September. That's the one that we want because August 31st is contained within that date. The last couple, they are kind of the opposite of that. They start in early August and they go until early September. That's the statement we want. So if your statement is for August 6th to September 5th, we don't need two. We still just need the one that contains August 31st. And the reason for that is that we just use August 31st as our standard date to assess what resources you have available to you prior to the school year starting. So there are like maybe 2% of students who might need to provide a different date. Assume that's not you and that we need August 31st. If we need something different from you, we will reach out. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to pop it in the chat. To add your accounts, you're going to go to the section that has a whole bunch of check boxes and check off the accounts that you have. So if your account type is not located in this list, you can add it at the bottom. But in this example, I've checked off that I have a checkings account, a savings account, a TFSA, and an RESP. So you can see I'm not done because it is still giving me that red exclamation mark, which means I have not completed the section. I still need to upload statements. And what does that look like? So you can see here I've added a checkings account. I've put the institution name and I've put the amount. And when it says amount, that is the amount that was in the account on August 31st. And then I have uploaded my statement for my TD checkings account. Once I have uploaded a statement for all of the types of bank accounts that I said I have, then I will get a check mark at the top. So you can see the little green checks all across the board and the check mark at the top, that means I've done it all correctly. Annotating your statements. So writing on your statements is not technically required. It's definitely allowed if you think going when I talk in the next little while, if you're like, oh, I think that I should, you should. And it's definitely something that we can request. So here's sort of an example of a statement. We only typically want to know about deposits and withdrawals of over $500. So this statement, you can see it's got my full name on it. It's got the date range on it. This one is not for the right dates because it's for September. I would need the one before. But these lines where I've said that I'm paying for my tuition, or that my roommates are sending me grocery money, things like that, that is just to help explain unclear transactions. So if you're getting one that says, University of Alberta residence, and you're making that payment, I'm going to assume you're paying your residence fee. That's not something I'm going to be unclear about. But if I see like a check deposit of $2,000, I might have some questions about where that funding is coming from. So those are the kinds of things that you want to label. There's a whole bunch of ways that you can label your statements. So you can use a PDF editor, which I've done for a couple of these statements, to type right on the PDF. One of them, I printed out the statement and then I've made a note in pen and I've re-uploaded the statement. That's fine too. If you don't want to do any of that, then you can include just a Word document with your statement that shows what the transactions are. And again, only the ones over $500 are typically requested. The incomplete or wrong dates on bank statements is the number one delay that we have in assessing applications. So if it's not the right dates or there's unclear transactions, we're sending it back to you, you're having to make changes and you're sending it back to us, and it can delay things quite substantially. So we have a little checklist here of what we're looking for. So just make sure you can check off all of the following. So you want to know, is it direct from your bank and in PDF format? So a lot of students, maybe you don't get anything in the mail anymore. There's no like snail mail statement. your bank will have a way for you to print your statement or download your statement from your banking app. So make sure that it comes direct from your bank. It has to have your full first and last name on it. It has to have an running account balance. So that means that as money goes out, it's updating every transaction what the balance of your account is. Um, does it show your rent and other living expenses? Are there large transactions that are not labeled? They should be. And then, of course, is it for the right time frame? Does it contain August 31st? Other resources that you might have. So, if you're an Indigenous student, you might receive some funding from your band. So, you would have to upload the documentation. So, usually they send you like an email or a letter that says how much they're going to give you for the academic year. So in this example, the student is getting $8,000 for tuition costs, and they're getting $1,000 a month or $1,000 for the academic year for the books and supplies and no living costs. All of these should be in the yearly format. So I said per month, that was wrong. It should be books and supplies, yearly living costs, and tuition costs per year. And then I've just uploaded a copy of the letter where they told us that. You might have family support. So if you have parents, nice rich uncle who's going to help you out with your tuition or living expenses, you're going to add this in this section. So the important thing to remember here is don't claim the same support twice. So in the example that I've given, I'm getting $500 a month in support from my parents to help me pay my rent, and I am getting nothing else. That's all they're giving me, $500 per month. A very common mistake that we will see is that you'll put in $500 per month and you'll say, oh, that's $4,000 a year. So I'm going to put that in as $4,000 yearly as well. So that is double counting it. We only want the support in one box. And maybe your parents do give you two different kinds of support. Maybe they help you with your tuition once a year and they give you monthly funding. That's fine. That's completely fine. We just want to make sure that we're not double counting it when we assess what resources you have available to you. All right, then we're going to get into department funding. So if you were a graduate student, this is going to be for you. If you were receiving any funding through a TA, an RA, or a graph, you are still eligible, of course, to apply for bursary funding, but you do need to just supply your funding letters. So if you're applying now um, in the fall term, then you would need to upload all of your funding letters that you have for the current academic year. It's very common that a student would receive nothing for the winter term yet until December, but go ahead and fill out the application with just your fall term, and we can do an assessment now to get you some support. If for some reason you are a thesis-based student who is not getting any department support, for whatever reason, we would just need a letter from your supervisor or your department just confirming that you are not receiving any funding from them. We're almost done. Then we get to the essays section. So, is there anything else about your life or your circumstances that you want us to know? This is the place that you can include it. It is completely optional to include more information. The application covers a lot. You're already going to be uploading a lot of documentation and giving us a lot of information. So, this is not the place where you have to reiterate all the information. This is not the part where you have to like re-traumatize yourself to tell us about your life situation. There is absolutely no penalty for leaving this blank, and for most students, you can just leave this blank. That's fine. Then we get to the information or additional information tab. This is a pretty quick tab, so that's nice at this late point in the application. It's just going to ask some demographic information about you. So it'll want to know like where you graduated from high school, if you're the first student in your family to go to university, things like that. If you're from a military family, questions like that. The reason that we ask this is that some of those donor funds that I had mentioned at the beginning um, might have specific criteria that they would like the students who receive that donor funding to meet. So, like a pretty common one is somebody went here and they're from a rural location, a small town. in Alberta. And later on, they're successful in life. They want to donate money to help students get through their own degrees, but they would really like it to go to other students who are from a small town. So that is something that our donors can request, and this is what this information is used for. There is an option for every single question to say that you prefer not to answer. That has absolutely no effect on your eligibility for bursary funds. It doesn't affect the amount. It doesn't affect um, the base eligibility. The initial assessment that I do when I'm assessing bursaries, I don't see any of this information. It is done blind. So uh, it could just help us match you with specific funding, but is not required. And then we're going to get to the declaration page. You are done almost. You're so close. Now you can submit the application. If the application, the submit button is grayed out, you've likely missed a required section of the application. So take a look at those buttons or those tabs at the top and look out for that red exclamation mark. So in this one, I have missed the tab. I'm missing something on the tab that says financial situation, and I would have to go back, update that section, and then come back and submit my application. But after that, you are done. So what happens next? After you've done all your work, it comes to us. I'm sure all the other coordinators are going to laugh when I say this, but it is a relatively simple math equation. We go through your application, we add up all of your eligible expenses and all of your resources that you have for this year. If your eligible expenses are greater than your resources, we give you funds to meet that gap. So what I was saying earlier, if your expenses are $10,000, you have $7,000 in resources, we're going to give you $3,000 to help you bridge that gap. But if we have to reopen the application, that can definitely delay things. So reopening the application means that we are setting it back to in progress. So you submit it and then we are reopening it so you can make changes. You can see there is a list of all of the status updates in your My Messages section of AFS. You're also going to get an email to your U Alberta email address with all of that. So the email will have what you're being requested, what we want clarity on, or what documentation needs to be updated. So if you're not sure what you're being asked for, please just email us first. Don't just resubmit the application. Don't guess if you're not sure. That slows it down even more because we get back to it. We're trying to figure out if you've put it somewhere, you've put the new information or the new documentation, then we have to reopen it again. And we're probably just going to say the exact same thing that we said the first time. So if you need clarity, email us first. We can't continue an assessment until you resubmit the application. So if it is in progress and that is the last status update, you need to do something to resubmit it. So you can see here in the My Messages, the student, they submitted their application. It was put under review, and under review means an assessor is now looking at it. And then it was reopened for some reason to get additional information or additional documentation. Once all that's done and the assessor is done with your application, you will get, and if you're receiving funds, you'll get an offer to accept in Bear Tracks. If you have any outstanding fees or tuition from the U of A, it will first go to that. And then if there's anything left after it pays off any fees, it will be refunded to you through Pay My Tuition. So that is an e-transfer, and that refund process can take several weeks because it's not just our department, it has to go through other departments. It also cannot be expedited. So applying for bursary is not a solution in an emergency situation. We do have emergency programming that I will talk about just at the end of this presentation. But the whole thing from start to finish can take up to 6 to 8 weeks. It is not quick. We hit the ground running October 1st when it opens, and we do assess in the order that applications are submitted. But unfortunately, especially in October, you are probably looking at not receiving funds until sometime in November or even December. So again, if it's not an emergency program, but we do have emergency programming that I will get into. If there's been a change, so you received funding and maybe you moved out or maybe you've had another kid and now you have increased costs. We can reassess your application. So this is not submitting a new application. You just have to send us an email and ask us for a reassessment before April 30th. So that's again a really firm deadline. We do not go past April 30th. So once you email us, you tell us what the change is. We will let you know if we need any other documentation or if additional funding is possible. This is typically a very fast process, like within a couple of days. We can reassess your bursary application. It is not a 6 to 8 week wait, and you don't have to fill out a whole new application for this. If you are requesting a reassessment, though, for spring and summer costs, because right now I'm in the fall term, you can't even apply for spring summer yet. Um, so you don't know what your costs are, you don't know if you're taking it. So it can be added as a reassessment if it is a part of your standard program structure. So again, not an exhaustive list by any means, but some students who might fall into this category are graduate students, anything to do with like medicine and dentistry, they typically have maybe 10 or 12-month courses. They go into like June or even July. Or if you're doing like a co-op, a practicum, or an internship in the summer that is required for your program, then you can ask for reassessment for that. If you're taking spring and summer courses because it's your choice, so maybe you want to get ahead or you didn't do so great in it the first time, so you're taking that course again to get a passing grade. That is not part of your required program structure, and those are not going to be eligible expenses. So we will not be able to add any spring summer costs um, if you are not required to take spring summer. Okay, we're done talking about the supplementary bursary. I think I talked a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I do want to go quickly through all of the other financial supports that we have here at the U of A. And then after we're done with that, we'll have a quick time for questions and answers. So, what other financial supports do we have? We have scholarships, awards, emergency loans. We have something called the Indigenous Student Support Fund. And then we also do provide um, assistance and advising on government student loans. So Scholarships 101 is a program quite similar to this that we run in early winter, late fall that helps you get set up to apply for scholarships for the next academic year. So the scholarship application for continuing students, which all of you should be, open in February and they close in March every year. If you're graduating in the winter, in June, you are still eligible to apply for convocation-based scholarships. So a lot of students don't know that they're still eligible in their last year to apply for scholarships. You are, so fill them out. One caveat here is that we do not handle any scholarships to do with graduate students. So if you are a graduate student who has questions about your scholarships or dates even, I would recommend reaching out to the Faculty of Graduate Studies. And you can check out more about undergraduate scholarships at uab.ca/awards. And then we also provide student loan support. So in every summer we run Student Loans 101. We really like this like 101 format. It is truly the gift that keeps giving. Um, and those are very similar to this as well, where we're going to go through how to apply for student loans, and you can fill out your loan application with us in the room, so you can get immediate support. Outside of Student Loans 101 in the summer, you can check out uab.ca/loans for resources. There's, I think, even a like recorded previous section if you need, if you want to watch that. And we said earlier, bursaries are not an emergency program. Emergency loans are an emergency program. So emergency loans are for students that are having a short-term but immediate issue. That is, it has a very, very quick turnaround. So typically you're going to hear back within like 1 to 2 business days max. And we are able to send you those funds the same day that your application is assessed. You have to demonstrate that you're able to repay the loan within 6 months, but you can repay an emergency loan with bursary funding. So if you apply for a or emergency loan and then are later awarded bursary funds, we will use those bursary funds to pay off your emergency loan. So you can apply for both of these programs at the same time. We also have the Indigenous Student Support Fund. So if you are an Indigenous student, this is a partnership between the First People's House and Student Financial Support to provide funding for FNMI students who need emergency support now. It is also quite a quick process. So typically 1 to 5 business days, I've said, but it is closer to 1 to 2 mostly. Um, this fund is not a loan, it is non-repayable. So they do not have to pay this back. And the funds are also sent out the same day your application is processed by e-transfer. And then finally, if you just want some more information on budgeting, maybe credit cards, your taxes. We also run free financial literacy workshops. Typically, we're going to see these in like October, November, and then again in like February and March. We run those. So if you want to see what we have going on, it's at uab.ca/finlit. And then there are resources that are available even outside of workshops that might be helpful for you as well. Okay, so that is the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for your attention. I've just been talking at you for so long. So finally, our website, uab.ca/bursaries. You can reach out to us by email at bursaries@ualberta.ca. If you want to come in person, the Student Service Center on the second floor of University Commons can help you. Um, Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that this was helpful. I will end the recording now, but I will stay on for the next 15, 20 minutes or so to answer any questions that you have. Have a great day.